Beyond the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick, Taylor Riggs, Shanali Bassett counting you down to that closing bell. Here to help take us beyond the bell. It's our global simulcast partners, Tim Stenovec and Katie Greifeld, in for Carol Masser. We welcome in all of our audiences across Bloomberg Television, radio, and YouTube. Tim, on a day that's certainly going to be a down day, a week that's certainly going to be a down week. The big question now, Tim, is what's actually being priced into this market as we head into a three-day weekend?
Yeah, that's true. And also, what's the next catalyst to watch for next week, perhaps ahead of the Fed meeting, what we hear from the Fed about interest rates. We are likely going to be hearing from more Fed speakers. Got to tell you, though, I'm still watching Bitcoin because...
Do we need more Fed speakers?
No, but
I feel like we've heard from a lot of them.
How coordinated do you think the narrative and the message is?
I don't think it's coordinated.
Not very, yeah.
I don't think it's coordinated at all. And I think it's causing a lot of confusion because, hawks are doves, doves are hawks. I don't know. Where are the owls? Remember the owls?
You're the owl.
I mean, that's what you're seeing play out in the equity market, in addition to all of these geopolitical tensions that we're trying to price through. I mean, you do have sort of, different noises coming out of these parade of Fed speakers. What I'm watching next week, I'm so excited to see those consumer University of Michigan inflation expectations. We know the consumers are really unhappy right now. It'll be interesting to see if those inflation expectations match up.
Before we even get to next week and to the Fed, we're going to be getting to a president as well, addressing some of the geopolitical concerns, which at least for today is something that the market is trying to digest and understand. We've talked a lot, Romaine, about the oil market implications, the equity market near-term reaction, but how that typically doesn't translate into long-term reaction either.
And we always have to keep in perspective here that a lot of what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, most of this damage had been priced into this market a while ago here. We're talking about markets that are firmly below their 200-day moving average, a NASDAQ that still remains in correction, and an S&P now that has a full drawdown of more than 9% from that all-time high. As far as your daily numbers, you got an S&P closing down 0.7% or about 31 points. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down about 232 points or 0.7%. The NASDAQ Composite with that death cross, the 50-day moving average below the 200-day, down 1.2% here on the day or 167 points. And as far as your small caps, your Russell 2000 looks like it's going to finish the day down by about 0.9%.
It's not too early for us to talk about year to date where we are, because I think a lot of people are thinking about, okay, when is the right time for me to start deploying cash, and when are we going to actually see the bottom in this equity market? The S&P 500 down 8.8% so far this year. The NASDAQ, though, down 13.4%.
I'm glad you touched on the NASDAQ. I want to touch on that just briefly. Before we entered today, 15% of stocks were only above the 50-day moving average. Only 35% were above the 200-day moving average when it comes to the NASDAQ 100. So that sort of shows the breadth of the sell-off that's underway. Let's get back to the daily moves for our radio audiences. We do the winners and losers on a sector basis. And while it's a lot more red than there is green, but it feels a little bit defensiveness. We've just durables, household products, food and beverage. Those are the sectors in the green, up about 0.3 to 0.6%. Everything else, though, is pretty much in the red. And you're really getting this rotation out of technology, Tim. That is what you mentioned. It's software and services. It's semiconductor equipment. And it is autos, as Romaine's Porsche are still burning in the Atlantic Ocean.
And it was a difficult day in equity markets. I did find some gainers, though. We have Dollar Tree. That was your biggest gainer in the S&P 500. That follows news that former CEO Bob Sasser, he's going to retire as executive chairman. Analysts say that raises the possibility of a settlement with activist Mantle Ridge. Traders welcome that news with open arms. Dollar Tree soared more than 5%. Ford also had a good day. Shares closed just below 3% higher, and we all know why. That's after a Bloomberg news scoop that the company is considering ways to separate its EV business from the legacy business. That boosted Ford shares by about 2.8%. And finally, Bloomin' Brands. You may know them as the operator of Outback Steakhouse. The company reported earnings, and the numbers were strong. And importantly, the outlook was good as well. That was good.
Do they break out how many of those onions they sell?
To Katie? How many they sell just to Katie?
They did not. Maybe I need to control F on the earnings release, but it was a good quarter overall, and that was good for a 7.6%.
It's like ARPU, right? Or
yeah, absolutely.
Average price of bloomin' onion. Hey, let's talk.
Avocados are back, by the way, I'm told.
I picked a few decliners that are all down double digits. We've been talking about them all day. Earnings related, Roku having its worst day since 2018. Shares just tanked after that first quarter revenue. Forecast fell short. Fourth quarter revenue also fell short of analyst expectations, down about little more than 77%, excuse me, from that July 2021 high. Redfin finishing the Dow down 20%. Company forecast a net loss for the first quarter. It was larger than the Bloomberg consensus. Handful of analysts cutting their price target as a result. A couple downgraded their rating on the stock. And then we got to end with DraftKings down 22% on the day today, falling the most in almost 2 years. Price target at JP Morgan, Truist. Look, you guys talked to Jason Robbins. We played a little bit about interview a few moments ago. It was interesting that he said that the company playbook, it's still working for him.
You know what's interesting, though, Tim, is we're going to fold in DraftKings, maybe Roku, back on over into the world of bonds, where I'm going to try to go next, is there is a very big repricing. And all the analysts on the street who cover those big stocks said growth at any price is no longer the game in town. And you do need to show some sort of path to profitability. Why? Because yields are still the focus. And this, of course, is sort of where yields are on the week. And what's interesting, I'll just quickly point us to the front end of that yield curve. Yields are actually down 3 basis points on the week. That's the first time we've seen a weekly drop in yields really all of this year, Romaine, as the narrative has been yields higher.
Yeah, yields higher as, of course, everyone started to price in what the Fed is going to do. I guess the question is, the geopolitical issues that seem to have driven the flight into some of these haven assets, how quick does that get unwound if there is some sort of diplomatic resolution to this?
Yeah, and you think about how interconnected all of these markets are right now. You were talking about the yields and the relationship to the equities. When we talked to the DraftKings CEO, he said that M&A was going to become harder. And while he invested in growth last year, investors are not rewarding that now. So how then, if you bring that across corporate America, stops M&A, starts to hurt hiring, and start to keep that ball rolling in the other direction?
I have a question for Katie here. Katie,
I want to answer this question.
Thank you, Katie. I mean, as our chief Gen Z correspondent, who, by the way, is definitely fit for the military.
I'm a millennial.
I would like
Romaine.
to point out, oh, you're a millennial?
I'm a millennial.
No way.
I swear to
No way.
God.
Stop
I
it.
promise you.
Stop it. In all seriousness, though, I mean, when you look at some of the moves that we saw in the crypto space this week, which was kind of no moves. I mean, we started off, it looked like crypto was kind of moving higher earlier in the week, and then it dropped down. And I'm curious about some of the correlations that we talked so much about a couple of weeks ago, whether those correlations with equities still is intact.
It's still intact, but this time it really seems to the detriment of crypto, not just in the fact that they move together, but also all of the action is in the equity market right now. Yeah. We were talking about this earlier in the week, and Tim and I were just speaking to Juthika Chow of Kraken that a lot of people, a lot of these day traders that really pumped crypto over the past 2 years, they're finding opportunities elsewhere.
That's a very Gen Z thing. What is Gen Z then? Who's Gen Z? Are you Gen Z, Shonali?
No, I'm also millennials, like the lost generation, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. We get so much attention.
Oh, Tim, you're a
nobody really
millennial?
likes
I'm what's referred to as a geriatric millennial. So I should probably sit this one out.
I'm like the middle child here.
We got to get a Gen Zer on here. But point being that you are seeing people sort of migrate from crypto. That's probably not a great news for all of the exchanges.
Is the NASDAQ still more volatile than crypto? Is
I
that
have
what
to
we learned?
rerun my spreadsheets, but just anecdotally.
Are bonds more volatile than crypto?
Well, where's
it
the
feels like
bond
it.
crypto correlation, the inflation crypto correlation these days?
I don't know.
Okay,
Can
so-
someone do a chart and put the money supply over that, and then we get
Well, that's
We're going to
what-
get a lot of
the whole
tweets.
That's
if that
exactly what
happens.
Juthika talked about with us, because think about the way that the narrative has shifted, right? Caroline had that great chart yesterday that showed the divergence of Bitcoin and gold, right? So it's not digital gold. But Juthika did reference the idea that, she ultimately does believe that one day, Romaine, it could be an inflation hedge.
Yeah, I mean, we joke obviously a lot about crypto and the way, look, there's a different narrative for crypto every year here, but I mean, there's certainly some credence to the idea. As somebody who, kind of started his career covering precious metals, I mean, look, you can make something out of anything and ascribe value to anything.
Can I say something that will make this whole desk laugh a little bit? While Caroline is off today and I'm sitting at her desk, I'm reading about NFTs in the breaks. So I feel like I'm channeling her in here a little bit.
We can always have a little extra crypto.
When do NFTs
Katie.
become a store of value?
That is the question the world wants to know. But I do want to put on my crypto bullish hat and just say that a lot of the advocates who are, advocating that Bitcoin is an inflation hedge, they would say there hasn't been enough time to basically zoom out. I mean, Bitcoin, it's only been 14 years since it was created that, you know, if you just hodl enough.
That's a Gen Zer, right?
Well,
yeah. So I am curious. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was just going to say we haven't heard a lot lately about crypto desks doing hiring at some of the big banks the way we heard about it when crypto prices were at record highs just a few months ago.
We talked to somebody a little bit earlier today from Galaxy Digital, which is a much smaller company.
But you know, that's Galaxy Digital. I mean, they're.
I will
totally
say though, the
crypto
M&A, it really hasn't slowed down, which has been remarkable to me. It feels like you see all these funding announcements every single week, and it's still a very hot space. And you're seeing that in the broader M&A market too. That even with this volatility, not a lot of deals have been pulled. It seems like.
You know what's remarkable is we'll probably have something to talk about when it comes to crypto on Tuesday because it does trade even over a holiday weekend. So.
Who's your favorite president? You know you have to celebrate President's Day on Monday.
We don't get political here. Okay, Romaine, who's yours?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, that is going to do it for our cross-platform coverage on TV, radio, and on YouTube. Have a great long weekend, everyone. Enjoy the holiday weekend. We're going to see you same time, same place on Tuesday.